The house in the wood that was not there in the morning. Settle yourself, friend. The wind has come round again, and I want you on the lee side of the fire. There, that is better. Tonight I will tell you a story I have told only twice in my life, and neither of the men I told it to is alive now, and I think it is time it was told to a third, because the country has too few stories like it left, and the ones it has are mostly told wrong. I was older when this happened than I have been in most of the stories I tell. I was 34. I had been on the road 16 years by then, and I had thought I knew the country I was in, and the thinking was, as you will hear, the first mistake. There is no country you know once you have been in it a long time. There is only a country you have made assumptions about, and the assumptions will, at some point in your walking, come up against a place that does not honor them, and the country itself will not, in that moment, help you. It was October. I was walking from a small town called Wenford in the West Country up to a larger town called Chesham, which lay perhaps 2 days walking to the north and east. I had walked the road between them 3 times before. I knew the inn at the halfway, and I knew the shepherd at the upper farm who would let me sleep in his hay barn for the price of 2 tunes after his supper, and I had set out from Wenford on a clear cold morning, expecting nothing of the walk that I had not seen on the 3 earlier walks. The weather changed at noon. It changed the way weather changes in October in that country, not gradually, not with the slow gathering of cloud you can read from a ridge, but all at once. I had been walking with the sun on my left shoulder for perhaps 4 hours, and at midday I crossed a small stone bridge over a stream, and on the far side of the bridge the wind had a different smell on it. It smelled of cold and of wet leaves, and I knew, the way a man who has walked 16 years knows, that there would be rain by evening, and that the rain would be hard, and that the temperature would drop several degrees before midnight. I thought about turning back. I considered it for perhaps a quarter of an hour while I walked. I was perhaps 4 hours from the inn at the halfway, and perhaps 4 hours from Wenford behind me, and the choice was either to push on and reach the inn before the worst of it, or to turn back. I pushed on. A man on a road who has done 4 hours of walking does not, by inclination, throw the 4 hours away. I knew this then, and I know it now, and I am telling you, friend, that this knowing is one of the things that goes wrong with a traveler on a day a thing is about to happen to him. The wanting not to waste what he has already walked is the thing that walks him into the country he should not have been walking into. Remember it. The rain began at 3 in the afternoon. The wind got into the rain quickly. By 4, it was the kind of rain that goes sideways under a hood, that finds every place a cloak meets a sleeve, and the road went from a road into a thin running stream that ran with me down the slight slope I was walking. I was wet through the cloak within half an hour, and wet through the under tunic within an hour, and the wind that had been a small thing at noon was a wind that I had to lean my shoulder into to walk against. I missed the turning for the inn. I want to be honest with you about this, traveler, because the missing of the turning is the part of the story I have not told most clearly even to myself. The turning was a small turning off the main road to the south, marked by a single white stone, and I had taken it 3 times before without difficulty. I missed it that afternoon because the rain was in my eyes, and the white stone, when I came past it, was not white in the wet. It was the same grey as everything else, and I walked past the turning without seeing it, and I went on for perhaps half an hour before I understood that the inn should have come into view by then and had not. I stopped on the road. I considered. The rain was getting heavier. The light, which had been the grey light of a heavy afternoon, was beginning to be the deeper grey that comes before dark. I could turn back and look for the turning, which would cost me an hour, or I could press on for the shepherd's farm at the upper edge of the valley, which would cost me perhaps 3 hours if I held my pace. I was tired. I was wet. I was cold. I pressed on. That was the second mistake. The first had been pushing on past Wenford. The second was pressing on past the missed turning. There is, friend, almost always a third mistake in stories of this kind, and I will tell you the third in due course, but I want you to count them as we go, so that you can see the shape of what was happening to me. I came off the road perhaps an hour after that. I did not mean to come off the road. The road came off itself. I had been walking on what I had taken to be the main road for some time, and at some point I had become aware that the road I was walking on was narrower than the road I had been walking on at the bridge, and that the road I was walking on was not, when I looked at it carefully through the rain, a road at all. It was a track. It was perhaps the track of a single cart that had passed that way some weeks before, and it ran through ground that was no longer the open country I had been walking through, but was by then the edge of a wood that I had not seen myself enter. I stopped. I looked back. The track behind me went straight back into the wood, in the direction I had come from, but the open country I had been in an hour before was not, by any line of sight, visible behind me. There was only wood. The wood was the kind of wood you find in the western country in October, oak and ash and rowan, the leaves mostly down but some still on the branches, the trunks dark with rain, the ground thick with the soft brown of fallen leaves. I had not noticed the wood begin. Let me stop here a moment, friend. The wind has risen. Pull your cloak tight at the neck. Are your feet warm? Keep them near the stones at the edge of the fire. I do not want you cold for the next part. I will go on when you have settled yourself. I should have turned around. I want you to hear me say it. I should have turned around. I should have walked back along the track the way I had come, in the rain and the failing light, and I should have kept walking until I was out of the wood and on the road again, and I should have walked back to Wenford if necessary. Wenford was a long way behind me. I would not have got there in any reasonable time, but the country had given me, at that moment on the track, a clear sign that I was not where I had thought I was, and the proper answer to a clear sign of that kind is to retreat to the last place a man knew his ground, and I did not give the proper answer. I did not turn around because I was 34, and I had been on the road 16 years, and I knew better than to be frightened of a wood at evening. I told myself that the track must lead somewhere. I told myself that the track came from somewhere and went to somewhere, and that the somewhere it went to would have a roof on it, and that I was perhaps half a mile from the nearest farm by the look of the track, and that the farm would have a barn or a porch or a wall I could shelter behind, and that the half-mile of walking was less than the 4 miles back to Wenford. I walked on. The track took me through the wood for perhaps 20 minutes, and at the end of 20 minutes the wood opened out into a small clearing, and in the clearing was a house. It was a small house. It was the kind of house a man builds for himself in a wood, 2 rooms perhaps, a single stone chimney with smoke coming from it, a slate roof darkened with rain, a small window at the front showing warm yellow light through the rain. There was a porch over the door, supported on 2 posts. There was a low stone wall around a small garden in front of the house. The garden had been tended. I could see, even through the rain, the regular shapes of beds and the dark mounds of plants that had been cut back for winter. There was a single old apple tree at the corner of the garden with a few brown leaves still on it. It was, friend, the most welcome sight I had seen in 4 hours. I will tell you that frankly. After 4 hours of rain and wind, and getting lost on tracks that became other tracks, I came out of the wood into a small clearing with a small house with smoke coming from its chimney and yellow light in its window, and the relief of it was a relief I did not, at the time, examine for the things I should have examined it for. I want you to think about that, traveler. The relief that you feel when you find shelter at the end of a hard day is, on most days, the relief a man is supposed to feel. It is the reward for the 4 hours. It is the thing that tells him he was right to press on. But the relief is also the thing that, on the wrong day, in the wrong wood, will stop him from looking at what he has found, because the looking would mean walking back into the rain, and he is too tired to walk back into the rain. The relief is a tool the country uses, sometimes on travellers who have made two mistakes already. I went up the path to the house. The door opened before I had reached it. A woman stood in the doorway. She was perhaps 50 years old. She was a tall, thin woman with grey hair gathered under a clean white cap, and she was wearing a long, dark dress with a clean white apron over it, and she was holding the door open with one hand and a wooden spoon in the other, as though she had come from the stove. She looked at me without surprise. "Come in, traveller. You will be wet through. Come in. There is a fire and there is supper, and you may stay the night if you have nowhere to be. My name is Mistress Aldric. My husband is at the back fetching wood. Come in." I will tell you that I went in without hesitation. I did not, in honesty, examine the woman's lack of surprise at my arrival. I did not consider that a small house in a wood, 10 miles from any road I knew, did not get travellers at its door often enough for the woman of the house to open the door at a knock with a wooden spoon in her hand and an offer of supper already in her mouth. I noticed none of these things. I went in. I was 34. I was wet through. The room beyond the door was warm and dry and smelled of supper, and I went into it the way a man goes into the first warm room he has found in 4 hours of cold rain, which is to say I went in without thinking. The room was the front room of the house. It was a single low room with a flagged floor and a stone hearth at the far wall, and a fire burning steadily in the hearth, and a long table by the window, and 2 chairs by the fire, and a small bench under the window. The ceiling was crossed by dark oak beams. There were 2 doors off the room, one to the right of the hearth, which I took to be the kitchen, and one to the left, which I took to be the bedroom. A part was hanging over the fire on a chain. The part was bubbling slowly with what smelled like a stew. Mistress Aldric closed the door behind me. "Off with that cloak, traveller. Hang it on the peg by the door. Sit by the fire. You will be warm in a quarter of an hour. My husband, Aldric. Aldric, we have a traveller. Come and meet him." A man came in through the right-hand door. He was perhaps the same age as the woman, 50 or 55, a tall, thin man with a short grey beard, in dark working clothes, with an armful of split logs. He looked at me. He nodded. "Welcome, traveller. The weather is no friend tonight. Come sit. Mistress, the stew. The man is shaking." I was shaking. I had not noticed it until he had said it. I went to the fire. I sat in one of the 2 chairs. The fire was warm against my legs, and the warmth was a thing I had not felt in 4 hours. And I sat, and I let the warmth come into me, and I did not, for perhaps a quarter of an hour, think anything in particular. Mistress Aldric set the table. She brought out 3 bowls and 3 spoons, and a loaf of bread, and a small dish of butter. Aldric set the logs by the hearth, and built up the fire a little, and sat down in the other chair opposite me. He did not, at first, speak. He looked at me with the friendly, patient look of a man who is used to letting other people warm up in their own time before he asks them anything. After some minutes he said, "Where are you bound, traveller?" "Chesham, sir." I am 2 days out of Wenford, and I missed the turning for the inn at the halfway in the rain." "Ah, you will have walked past the white stone." "I think so, sir. The stone was not white in the wet. It never is. They should have used a darker one. We have told them so. They have not in the country round listened. Mistress, the stew. The man will fall over if he does not eat. The stew was good. It was a mutton stew with barley and carrots and onions, and the bread was fresh bread, and the butter was good butter, and there was a small cup of ale apiece that Aldric poured from a pitcher on the side table. I ate. I did not speak much through the eating. I was hungrier than I had known I was, and the warm food after the cold rain was a thing that occupied me entirely while I was eating it. Aldric and his wife ate with me. They spoke a little. They asked me about Wenford, and I told them what news I had from it, which was not much. They asked me about the country I had come through, and I told them. They did not, in the meal, tell me much about themselves. They did not say what Aldric's trade was, or whether they had children, or how long they had lived in the house in the wood. They asked. They did not offer. I noticed this in a small way while I was eating. I noticed it the way a fiddler notices a tune he has heard played slightly differently somewhere else and cannot quite place. I did not act on the noticing. I went on eating. When the meal was finished, Mistress Aldric cleared the bowls. She brought a second jug of ale and 3 clean cups. She poured them. She sat down in the chair her husband had sat in, and Aldric had moved to the bench under the window. The 3 of us sat with our cups of ale, and the fire burned. "Traveller," said Aldric, "Sir, you are welcome to the bed in the back room tonight. The bed is made up. The room is warm. The rain will not stop before morning. I would be grateful, sir. I will pay you what I have. I have a little silver. You will not pay us. You are a traveller in our house on a cold night, and we do not take silver from a man we have given supper to. It is not the custom in this country. It is generous of you, sir. It is the custom. The customs are not in themselves generous. They are only the customs. You have, perhaps, a fiddle in your pack." Mistress Aldric said this, smiling. "I see the shape of it under the cloth. I have a fiddle, mistress. Will you play us a tune? I will play you 2, if you like, for the supper and the bed." I got the fiddle out. I tuned it. I played them 2 tunes. A tune I had learned in the south country called the Mill at Brindon, and a tune from further west called the Maid of the 3 Wells. The Aldrics listened without speaking. They did not, while I played, drink. They sat with their cups in their hands and they listened, and when I had finished the second tune they were both still, for perhaps a long moment, before Aldric set his cup down and said, "Thank you, traveller, those were good tunes. You are welcome, sir. You will sleep well now. The bed is in the back room through there." He gestured to the left-hand door. "There is a candle on the small table. There is a basin and a jug of water if you wish to wash. The privy is out the back door across the small garden. The dog will not bark at you if you go out. He knows you now. You have a dog, sir. I had not seen him. He is in the kitchen. He came in once when you were eating and went out again. You were busy. Forgive me a moment, friend. My throat. There, the water is good. Are you still warm? Put another small piece of wood on the fire if you reach it. I want the fire to last the rest of this part. The next part is the part I want you to hear with the fire steady." I went into the back room. I will tell you what I noticed in it, traveller, because some of what I noticed at the time, and some of it I only noticed later, and I want you to know which was which. What I noticed at the time was that the room was small and clean. There was a single bed against the inner wall, made up with white linen and a thick wool blanket. There was a small table beside the bed, with a candle in a brass holder. There was a basin and a jug of water on a stand by the window. There was a single small window looking out into the dark. The room smelled faintly of lavender, which was the smell of clean linen that has been kept in a chest with lavender sachets. What I noticed at the time was that there was no fire in the room and no fireplace. The room was warm anyway, with the warmth that comes through the wall from a fire on the other side of it. The warmth was on the wall that backed onto the front room, where Aldric's fire was burning, and it was perfectly explicable. I noticed it. I thought about it. I dismissed it. What I did not notice at the time, but noticed in the morning, and have thought about a great many times in the years since, was that the bed was made up. I had walked into the house at the door without warning. Mistress Aldric had come from the stove with a wooden spoon in her hand. The bed had been made up before I had come in. There had been clean linen on it, and the blanket had been laid, and the pillow had been placed, and all of this work had been done before I had knocked. I had not knocked. The door had opened before I had reached it. The bed had been made before I had come out of the wood. I did not, that night, think about this. I undressed. I washed my face and my hands at the basin. I blew out the candle. I got into the bed. The bed was warm. The linen was the cleanest linen I had slept in for 2 months, and the blanket was a good blanket, and the rain on the slate roof above me was a sound I had not heard from inside a building all afternoon, and I went to sleep within perhaps a minute of putting my head on the pillow. I dreamed. I dreamed badly. I do not, friend, remember most of the dream, because dreams of that kind do not stay with a man clearly in the morning. I remember only that I was on a road, and that the road was the road I had been on that afternoon, and that the road was running away from a place I had been in, and that the place I had been in did not want me to leave, but was, by some courtesy I did not understand, letting me. I remember also that in the dream the place had a name, which was not Aldric, and not Mistress Aldric, and not the house in the wood, but was a third name, an older name, that I cannot now bring up to my mouth, and could not bring up in the morning either, and that the name was the name of the thing I had eaten supper with. I remember knowing this in the dream, and accepting it the way a man accepts things in dreams, without arguing. I woke at first light. The room was cold. I lay in the bed for a moment, and I did not, at first, understand the cold. The room had been warm when I had gone to sleep. The wall had been warm against my back where the bed touched the wall, and the wall had been warm because there was a fire on the other side of it. The wall was not warm now. The wall, when I put my hand on it, was the cold, damp stone of a wall in a building that has not had a fire in it for a long time. I sat up. The room was lighter than it should have been, because the small window had no shutter and no curtain, and the light of dawn was coming in through it, and the light was a grey, wet morning light, and I could see by it that the room I was in was not, by any honest accounting, the same room I had lain down in. The bed I was in was a bed. It had linen on it. The linen had been white in the candlelight. It was white still, but the white had a colour to it now that the white had not had in the candle, a grey-yellow undercolour, the colour of linen that has been in a closed room for some years without being washed, and the smell of the linen, which had been clean lavender the night before, was the smell of cloth that has been left a long time in a dry place. The bedside table was a bedside table. There was a brass candle holder on it. The candle in the candle holder was a candle that had been lit and blown out, but the wax that had run down the side of the candle while I had been undressing was, in the morning light, not fresh wax. It was old wax. It was wax that had run down a candle a long time before and had set hard and dark with the dust of years. I got out of the bed slowly. I was still wearing my under-tunic. I had hung my cloak and my outer tunic over the chair beside the bed the night before. They were on the chair. I looked at the chair. The chair was a chair. My cloak was on it. The cloak was the cloak. But the chair, when I looked at it carefully in the grey morning light, was a chair whose legs had been broken at some point and whose seat had a crack running across it, and the wood was the wood of a chair that had been in a damp room for some years. I put my hands on the chair. The wood was soft with damp. The chair had not been a chair I could have sat on the night before to hang my cloak. The chair would have broken under the weight of the cloak. I looked at the floor. The floor was the same flagged stone floor I had walked into the night before. There was dust on it. There was a great deal of dust. There were no footprints in the dust, except for the ones I had just made getting out of the bed, and the marks on the floor where my feet had been put as I had come into the room the night before, which were not, this morning, footprints in dust. They were the bare places on the flagstones where dust had been disturbed perhaps a few hours ago, and had begun, in the dryness of the room, to settle again. I went to the door of the back room. The door was the same door I had come through. I opened it. I looked into the front room. The front room of the house was a ruin. It was the same front room. I could see this. The shape of the room was the same. The window was in the same place. The hearth was in the same place. The door I had come in by was in the same place at the other side of the room. But the ceiling beams that had crossed the room were down. 3 of them lay broken across the floor, and the slate roof above the front room was open to the sky in patches, and the sky I could see through the patches was the grey, wet sky of an October morning, and the room beneath the broken roof was full of leaves that had drifted in over many autumns. The hearth was cold. The hearth had no fire in it. The hearth had a small mound of leaves in it, and the bones of a bird that had perhaps died in the chimney some years ago. There was no part hanging from the chain over the hearth, because there was no chain. The chain had rusted through and was lying in the ashes at the back of the hearth. The table by the window was on its side. 2 of its legs were broken. The cups we had drunk our ale from were not on it. There were 3 earthenware cups on the floor beside the table, broken, of the kind that get broken when a table goes over. There were no Aldrics. I stood in the doorway of the back room, and I looked at the front room for a long time. I do not, friend, know how long. The light through the broken roof grew slowly stronger while I stood there. The rain had stopped in the night. A bird was singing somewhere out in the wood. I went back into the back room. I dressed. My outer tunic was on the chair where I had hung it, and was, when I picked it up, my own tunic, the same tunic I had been wearing the day before, dry now, smelling of nothing but my own walking. My cloak was the same cloak. My boots, which I had set under the chair, were my own boots. I put them on. I picked up my pack. My pack had not been opened in the night, and had nothing in it that should not have been in it. I went back into the front room. I crossed it. The flagstones underfoot were dusty, but they were the same flagstones. I went out of the door of the house, which was still on its hinges and still opened on the same wooden latch. I stood on the porch. The porch was rotten. The 2 posts that held up the porch roof were standing but were eaten through by damp, and the roof above me had a hole in it the size of a wagon wheel, and the rain of the previous afternoon had soaked the wood of the porch through, and the porch creaked under my feet. The garden in front of the house was not a garden. It was the place where a garden had been, perhaps long ago. There were the lines of beds still visible in the rough grass, but nothing had been planted there for a long time, and the apple tree at the corner of what had been the garden was dead, blackened at the trunk by some disease, with no leaves and no fruit. I walked down the path from the door to the gate in the low stone wall. The wall was tumbled in 2 places. The gate was off its top hinge and was leaning at the post. I went out of the gate. I turned. I looked back at the house. The house was a small ruined cottage in a clearing in the wood. It had perhaps not been lived in for 50 years. The roof was holed. The garden was wild. The porch was rotten. The chimney, when I looked up at it, had no smoke coming from it, and had not, by the look of the dark crumbling stones at its top, had a fire lit in it for a long time. I stood at the gate, and I looked at the house for a long time. I did not, then or after, see any sign of the Aldrics. Let me pause here, friend. This is the part of the story that asks a man to sit with what he has just heard. Take a breath. The fire is still good. Drink if you have water. I will go on in a moment. There is not much more, and what there is I will tell you straight. I walked back through the wood. I walked back along the track I had walked in by, which was still a track, but was, in the morning light, the kind of track that has not been used for a cart in many years. Half grown with brambles, with no recent wheel ruts in it, with the look of a way that had once gone somewhere and now did not. I walked it for perhaps half an hour. I came out of the wood at the place I had come into the wood the afternoon before. The road was a road. It was the road I had been walking on. The white stone for the turning to the inn was, I saw when I got to it, only about a half-mile back the way I had come. I had missed it the day before because of the rain. In the morning light, dry, I could see it from a quarter-mile away. I went to the inn. The innkeeper at the halfway was a man called Pertinax, whom I had met on my 3 previous walks through the country. He knew me. He greeted me at the door. He gave me bread and a cup of warm beer and asked me where I had spent the night. I told him. He looked at me a long moment. He set down the cup he had been wiping. Aldric, you did not. I did, Pertinax. You slept the night. I slept the night, and you came out of it whole. I have come out of it. Whole, I am not entirely sure. He sat down across from me. He had not, in all my visits to the inn before, sat down at a table with me. He sat down now. He put his hands flat on the wood between us. He said, "The house in the clearing has not had anyone in it for 60 years, Aldric." The Aldrics who lived there were a couple of about that age. They had a daughter who died at 4, and they did not, after the daughter died, take well to any traveller who came through the wood. Mistress Aldric fed 7 travellers, and 7 travellers did not come out of the wood again. And the 8th came out, and lived 3 days, and would not say what had been in the supper. And the country got together, and went into the wood with torches, and the Aldrics were found in the front room of the cottage, hanging from the beam. And the country did not, after, knock the cottage down, because the country was afraid of what would come out of it if the cottage were taken away. The country has let the cottage stand, and has let the wood close over the track to it. And there has been, in my time of keeping this inn, perhaps 1 man in 12 years who has come out of the wood and told me he slept there. And that man left in the spring of the next year, and did not, by any account I have had, come into another inn anywhere I have heard of him being. He is dead, you think? I do not know. I think perhaps he is something other than dead. I do not, in honesty, know what he is. Aldric, what did they feed you? Mutton stew, barley, carrots, onions, bread and butter, small ale. A 2nd cup of ale by the fire, and you ate all of it, and you played them tunes, 2 tunes, and you slept in the back room. I slept in the back room. And in the morning the room was a ruin, and the Aldrics were gone. He looked at me a long time. Then the country has, for some reason of its own, decided not to keep you. I do not. Aldric know why. I will not pretend to know why. I have seen 1 man come out of that wood in 12 years, and he was not the same man going in as coming out, and you sit at my table this morning, and you look the same to me as the Aldric I have served bread to 3 times before. Perhaps you are. Perhaps the country let you go because of the tunes. The Aldrics in life, before the daughter died, were said to have loved music. There was a fiddle in the house. The fiddle is still there, I am told, on the wall above the hearth, though I have not gone in to see. Perhaps you played them tunes they had not heard played in 60 years, and the playing was the rent for the supper and the bed, and the rent was paid, and they let you go. Or perhaps you have not yet paid, Aldric, and the paying will come up later, in a year or in 10 years, or on the night you die. I do not know. I am not, friend, telling you this to frighten you. I am telling you this because I have known you 4 years now, and you are sitting at my table this morning, and I will tell you what is true, and let you decide what to do with it. I drank the rest of the beer. I sat with him at the table for some time. He did not ask me anything else. I did not tell him anything else. I walked on to Chesham that afternoon, and I have not, in the years since, gone back into that country. I will not. I have stopped working the western roads entirely. I work the eastern country now, and the southern, and I have done so for 20 years. And I do not, when I am asked by a traveller whether I know the road from Wenford to Chesham, give any answer except that the road is one I do not walk any more. I will tell you now, friend, what I have come to think about it, and then we will sleep. I have come to think Pertinax was right. I think the Aldrics in life had loved music, and I think the supper they fed me was a supper they fed travellers because they wanted company. And I think the 7 travellers before me had not played them tunes and had not been allowed to leave. I think I played them tunes, and they let me go, because the playing was what they had wanted, and the country, in its own way, gave them what they had wanted by sending them a man with a fiddle, and the man with the fiddle was not allowed to know what he was for until he was out of the wood the next morning. I think also that Pertinax was right about the other thing. I think the rent may not, in fact, have been paid in full. I have thought, in the 20 years since, that there is a debt I am carrying somewhere that I have not yet been called to settle. I have thought it on certain nights, certain Octobers, when the wind has come round in a certain way, and I have heard, very faintly, the sound of a stove being banked for the night somewhere in a house I cannot see. I have thought it, in particular, on the nights I have not slept well. I do not, friend, know what the debt is. I do not know when it will be called. I know only that I ate a supper in a house that was not a house, and that the eating of a supper in a place of that kind is not a thing a man does for nothing, and that what I paid in tunes that night may not have been the full price. Here are the warnings, then, before we sleep. If you ever miss a turning in the rain on a road you have walked before, do not press on. Turn back. The turning has not moved. You have. The turning is the country telling you that today is not a day you know it, and the proper answer is to walk back to the last place you did know it. If you ever come out of a wood you did not see yourself enter, into a clearing with a small house with smoke from its chimney and yellow light in its window, on an evening when no house should be where it is, do not knock. Walk past. Sleep in the rain, in the wet, under a tree, on the ground. Wet and cold are things a man can recover from. Suppers in houses that are not there in the morning are things a man cannot, in the years that follow, be sure he is fully paid for. If you find yourself, in any house in any country, eating supper with people who have asked you about yourself, but have not told you about themselves, set the spoon down, make an excuse, go out into the night, sleep where you can sleep. The supper is not the supper it appears to be. And if you ever find yourself on the night with a fiddle in your pack and a place across a hearth that wants something of you, play friend. Play what you have. Play your best. Play the tunes you know that were taught to you by people you loved, and play them as well as you can play them, and you will perhaps, in the morning, walk out of the wood. I cannot promise it. The Aldrics let me out, and they may not let out the next man, even with tunes. But the tunes were what I had to give, and I gave them, and I am sitting here with you tonight 20 years on, telling the story. Good night, traveller. Sleep close to the fire. The wind has turned, do you feel it? It is coming off the open country now and not out of the wood at the back, and that is the better wind for sleeping. I will sit up. I do not, as I have told you, sleep well by fires in October. But you sleep. You have heard what I had to tell, and that is the rent for this fire and this night, and the rent is paid. Sleep well, friend.